What's up, guys? Here with the Week 12 performance reviews. We got one more week until the playoffs, and I believe at this point the playoff teams have been decided. It is just a matter of seeding at this point. So, without further ado, let's get started here. I have my matchup versus Phil. Phil won this one pretty easily. It was 175 to 147. I did have the third most points in the league, barely. I almost had second. Lost would have been in second if I scored .4 more. But played the highest score this week, so got some tough luck this week. Look at my team here. I had Drew Brees with 14. P. Ryan had 15. Cooks with 18. Keenan Allen had 29. Mohamed Sanu had 16. Also threw a touchdown pass in that game. Jimmy Graham with 11, Rex Burkhead with 18, and Will Lutz had 10. I would say really the only dud in my lineup maybe is Jerick McKinnon. He got 6. Everybody else did fairly well. I did have Derrick Henry on the bench with 9 and Dotson on the bench with 10. If you look over here at Phil's team, he had Ben Roethlisberger with 31, Lamar Miller with 12, Peterson with 12, Antonio Brown had 36. Robbie Anderson had 30. Delaney Walker with 14. Latavius Murray with 14. Justin Tucker had 14. Nobody I would consider a dud in his lineup. On the bench, he had Andy Dalton, who had 19, so he played the correct quarterback there. And he also had Jamal Williams on the bench, who had 28. So he could have even had more points if he would have put Jamal Williams in there. And probably if he put him in there, he would have been the highest scoring team on the season, I believe. Next up, we have Ray versus Philip. Philip won this one 123 to 75. So we look here, starting with Ray's team. He had Kirk Cousins with 16, Tevin Coleman with 22, Zay Jones with 11, and that's kind of all he had there. Duds in his lineup. Ingram with 3. Maybe Amendola with 2 and Anderson with 1.2. Everybody else, I would say, kind of did what I would expect given their matchup. He did have Amari Cooper on the bench, who had 7.5. He left that game injured, and he also had a very tough matchup there. If we look over here at Phillips' team, he had Alex Smith with 14, Todd Gurley with 15. Jamison Crowder had 24. Martavis Bryant with 12. Kyle Rudolph with 20. Devonta Adams with 17. On the bench, he had Isaiah Crowell with 11 and Alex Collins with 13. Some duds in his lineup. Fournette with 6. Maybe probably the Bengals defense with 2, given their matchup, but everybody else probably got what you'd expect. Well, you probably expect a little more than 9 points out of A.J. Green, but that just means he didn't score a touchdown, basically. Next up, we have Michael versus David. Michael won this one 128 to 82. And I can already see why. So we'll start on Michael's team here. Michael had Cam Newton with 18, Joe Mixon with 24, Mike Evans 11, Adam Thielen with 13, Cooper Kupp with 16, DeMarco Murray had 12, Seahawks defense with 10, Matt Prater with 13, had Marshawn Lynch on the bench, who had 19. Some duds in his lineup. I wouldn't really say anybody's a dud. You might expect a little more than 4 points out of Orleans Darkwa, but other than that, pretty good outing out of his team. I look over here at David's team. He had Dak. He had basically his whole team was Julio this week. Julio had 45. Randall Cobb had 14, and everybody else on his team had single digits. He had Phillip Rivers on the bench, who had 29. So if he would have played Phillip over Dak Prescott, he would have had basically 25 more points, which would have done him quite well there. I also could have put Sammy Watkins in the game. He had 16. If he plays him over Tyler Lockett, he gets 16 additional points. 25. I mean, if he makes those changes, he still loses, but he basically only loses by about 5 points there. Big reason for his loss this week, which is something I've been harping on in these videos all season long, is set your lineups. Play players that are going to play. Obviously, we all know Chris Thompson's not going to play because he has a broken leg. So why do you have him in your lineup? It makes no sense. Jordan Reed's been in and out of the lineup all year. He hasn't played in like probably 3 or 4 weeks. You played him. Not really sure why. You know, these kind of things are very frustrating for the commissioner of the league and obviously for some of the other league mates. Obviously, in this case, the two teams playing in this matchup, neither one are going to make the playoffs, so it has no bearing on playoff seeding or somewhat determining who could possibly win the championship here. But it could affect seeds in the consolation bracket, which obviously affects draft picks for next year. I understand people are busy. I understand it was a holiday week. I know the Redskins played on Thursday, but when Tuesday comes after the Monday game, and obviously you should probably be putting in some waivers if you're going to do that. Just set your lineup then. Don't wait. If you're going to have difficulty, you're going to be busy, just set your lineup. Whatever you think is best. Just make sure you have players that are at least going to play to give your team the best opportunity to win. All right. So we'll move on here. Next up, we got Ray Sr. versus Garrett. Garrett won this one 103-72. So we'll start here by looking at Ray Sr.'s team. He had Tom Brady with 21. Sean Jackson had 10. And that's it for double digits in his lineup. He did have Marvin Jones on the bench with 26. So he could have definitely got some more points there, playing him over some of the guys he played. He had Chargers defense on the bench who had 18. So if he plays both of those guys over some people, he probably definitely would have won there because he only lost by 30. He would have got 15 there. Yeah, he would have won if he made those changes, but obviously Garrett can make changes as well. So we'll look here. Duds in his lineup. Jordan Howard with 3 points. He did have a very tough matchup. The Eagles' run defense is, I believe, #1 in the league, so tough matchup, but you'd probably still expect more than 3 points there. Golden Tate with 4. Cameron Brate with 1. Things like that. You probably expect Steelers defense to do more than 3 points against the Packers since they don't have Aaron Rodgers. But Brett Hundley's hanging in there. He's doing okay. If you look over here at Garrett's team, he had Russell Wilson with 24, Melvin Gordon with 10. Funchess had 14. Nelson Aguilar had 17. McCaffrey had 11. Had Jermaine Kearse on the bench who had 20. So he could have got some more points there. Stafford on the bench had 14, so he played the correct quarterback there. Some duds in his lineup, probably Ajayi with 4. Obviously Crabtree who had 0 because he decided to, I guess he wanted to join MMA, and him and Talib decided to duke it out in the game. It's not the first time they've crossed paths and had a scuffle, so they decided to go at it, and I believe it happened early in the game in the first quarter. Crabtree and Talib got suspended or kicked out of the game, and they're also both suspended for this week's game. So obviously for fantasy purposes, Garrett will have Crabtree back for the playoffs. He'll be a playoff team, and I don't really know if anybody's playing the Denver defense at this point. Obviously Talib is a very good corner, but I really feel like Denver defense is just giving up because their offense can't score any points. So I feel like they don't think they even need to try anymore because it's kind of pointless when your team can't score double digits most of the time. Next up, we have George versus Joseph. George won this one 102-72. So almost identical scores in the past 2 matchups. Look here at Joseph's team. He had LaShawn McCoy with 10. Alshon had 14. Jarvis Landry with 11. Jaguars defense had 11. Matt Bryant had 11. Had Tyrod on the bench with 14, so he could have got some more points there because if we look at the duds in his lineup, Eli Manning with 2.5. Doug Martin with 3.5. Jared Cook with basically half of a point. Jeremy Maclin with 1. that's why his score is kind of low this week. A lot of guys struggling there. And I'm sure you guys have heard that Eli Manning has been benched in favor of Geno Smith. Not really sure what the Giants are thinking because Geno Smith sucks. So hopefully they eventually take him out and put, I believe, David Webb as the third string quarterback currently. He's a rookie, so at least let's see what he can do because Geno is atrocious, which is going to hurt Sterling Shepard's value and Evan Ingram's value. Look over here at Georgia's team. He had Matt Ryan with 17, Frank Gore 15, Ginn with 11, Zach Ertz with 21. Eagles defense had 13. Had Blake Bortles on the bench with 23, so could have got a little more points there. Panthers defense on the bench with 16. Some duds in his lineup. Doug Baldwin with 3. You'd expect a little more there. That's kind of it in my opinion there. All right. I believe this is the last matchup we have here. It's Dalton versus Dakota. Dalton won this one 147 to 102. So we'll start with Dakota's team here. He had Carson Wentz with 24. Lev Bell had 23. Dion Lewis with 12. Jack Doyle with 13. On the bench, he had Keenum with 27, so he could have got a couple more points there. Would have made a big difference there. Some duds in his lineup. I'd probably say Dez with 5. It's a little bit of a dud. Fitz with 5, a little bit of a dud. Kareem Hunt with 3. Obviously, he's really been struggling for the second half of the season. Can't find the end zone. They're not really even giving him that many touches anymore. They're getting Charkandrick West involved more. And I believe the other guy is Akeem Hunt, or that might not be his name, but his last name's Hunt, the other running back they have there, and they're even giving him some touches. We look at Dalton's lineup here. Carlos Hyde with 10. Kamara with 34, Hopkins with 16, Diggs with 10, Gronk with 23, Drake with 10, Patriots with 18, Zerline with 17. Had Derek Carr on the bench with 16, so he could have got some more points there. Because if we look at his duds, Mariota had 8, Devonta Parker had 1. So a couple sore spots there in his lineup. Has some injuries on the bench as well. So that wraps up the reviews on everybody's matchups this week. Currently, we have a four-way tie for first place between Dalton, Dakota, myself, and Garrett. None of us actually played Dakota this week, so he is tied for second. So this we have 4 people tied for first, 2 people tied for second. So those 6 teams are already in the playoffs. But depending on how matchups go this week, it could go a number of different ways. I know I'm playing Dakota, and I believe if I lose to Dakota, Dakota will be a higher seed than me because we'll have the same record and he has more points for. Because my guess is there's going to be multiple ties. Because if it's straight up, we all know it's head-to-head. I've beaten Dakota before, but if he beats me, then we're tied, and it'll go to points for, and he's got a lot more points for than I do. So he'll be a higher seed than me. Obviously, if Dalton wins, he is going to be the number 1 overall seed. If Phil wins, he'll be the number 2 seed. Because right now they're 1 and 2 in points scored. So I believe that's how it'll work out. Obviously we'll see, but both of them have not easy matchups, but so-so. They're not competing against playoff teams, so they definitely are favored in their matchups heading into this week. Nothing really discussed on waivers. Waivers processed today at noon. I believe everybody that put in a claim got the guy they wanted. With the exception of Rod Smith. I believe Dakota put in a $3 bid and Dalton put in a $4 bid. Nobody else bid on anybody. It's not, in my opinion, not really much out there to pick up this week. So best of luck to everybody. It's the last week of the regular season. Playoffs start next week. And we only got a few weeks left. And we'll know who the champion is for 2017. And we'll kind of know what the draft order is heading into next year. And we'll be able to prepare accordingly. See you guys later.